this is for the one who ain't never had a love, yeah. This one's for the girl who don't feel like she's enough, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one's for the cool kid playing on the school team, crying to himself cause he never had the prom queen. Head full of wants, but they said it's just a pipe dream, yeah. This one's for the kids like me, they never had one day. The ladies always turn their cheek, but they ain't let the fat ones sing. This one's for the kids like me, kept working when they had nothing. When people try to take their dreams, they stuck it to them, please don't change. For the
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, February 26th of 2025? I'm Alex. Obviously, Dave's not here. This is his off week. He is still tending to, all of his wounds of his trans surgery and everything like that. So we'll see if he comes back as Felicia next time we see him. But overall, appreciate everyone for being here. How's everybody doing? As always, we're going to have a good time. Appreciate everyone from wherever they're watching, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, Kick, Rumble, all of those. We appreciate every single person that watches. Please do your due diligence and like, share, follow, subscribe, do all that good jazz. If you're listening via podcast form, we appreciate you as well. You're equally as important as those who are watching this live or even later. We appreciate you all. Please give us a 5-star review and leave a comment there. All the good stuff, like I always say, you can find us everywhere at the Alex Cuesta Show. I already see Nate and I already see Squiggles hanging out. What's going on, gentlemen? Appreciate you guys. I don't even know if you're both gentlemen. I assume Nate's a guy. Squiggles, I don't know if you're a dude. You can confirm if you are. But I appreciate everyone that watches. I want to get right into it. Last week, Dave and I had a really good time. I can't speak tonight. A really good time talking to Odin of OMB Reviews. We talked about all the stuff box office, what to expect, the wokeness and shit in Hollywood. So we really got into all those things there. If you're a movie person, definitely go check out that last episode. But overall, go to OMB Reviews, go on his YouTube. Definitely go subscribe there because he's freaking fantastic. But I want to jump right into it because we had some important stuff go on. And I want to bring in my guest because my guest is awesome. He's someone that, funnily enough, I tried to talk to like a year ago, and he was gracious enough. Like sometimes you'll message people, it'll take him a minute, but he was gracious right away. He was like, yeah, email this person. I have the secretary, blah, blah, blah. And me being my procrastinating self just dragged ass. And then like a year later, I see him on Timcast and I'm like, crap, I never messaged him. So luckily I sent out a big email. Cool dude, got back to me again. And here we are. We set it up. Bring him right in. He is Terry Schilling. He is the president of the American Principles Project. Terry, what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Alex. I'm excited to be here. And I love talking to everyone. And I've seen a few of your episodes and some clips, and I was really excited to do this. So thanks so much for having me, and looking forward to our discussion tonight.
I appreciate that. I'm happy that you really like unprofessionalism in podcast. No, I'm kidding. But no, I'm happy to have you here. And you're someone who, I followed on Twitter, X, whatever the hell, for a long time. What you do with the American Principles Project is friggin' awesome. And all the notoriety you get is absolutely well-deserved because you've been fighting this battle for a little while in terms of trying to keep America in a lot of ways in terms of our family values and stuff. But before we get into our general itinerary, I wanted to jump in with some current news. Now, anyone that watches knows that typically when we have our guests on, we don't necessarily do the current news thing. We kind of get into the things that you guys want to talk about. But I felt this was important, and I felt this also fit into the whole entire, thing with the show going on because Pam Bondi, the AG, Trump's AG, announced that the Epstein client list will be out tomorrow, the 27th. So I want to jump real quick to the screen. Let's watch Pam do this. Get us up on the side. What are we doing here? Come on, Rumble. Not Rumble. What are you? Restream. But let's watch, Pam. It was a truth put out by Citizen Free Press. And let's see it from the horse's mouth here.
A lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200.
Wow.
So we have well over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well, we'll
along
look
with
for
his
that.
co-defendant.
Absolutely.
All right, so we get that. Terry, is that your first time seeing that?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. That's breaking news. That's incredible. I think it's going to be earth-shattering. I think there's going to be a lot of surprising names on that list. I think it's going to have people from both political parties on there, and I think it's going to rock DC. That's for sure.
And I hope it does, right? And I hope whoever, I've seen, and I don't know if you've been this way, because I have been very gung-ho about get this list out there. I've said it on every episode now, got to be going on almost a year at the top saying we need the Epstein client list out there. And I've seen a lot of conservatives and a lot of conservative pundits push for this as well. And as we've been getting closer, I don't know if they're getting cold feet, but I've heard a lot of these pundits go, well, we need to be careful now. We don't want people being persecuted. And me personally, I'm kind of like, fuck that. I want this stuff out there. And kind of, if you were palling around with Jeffrey Epstein more than, okay, if you're on the flight log once, right? The guy's a billionaire, you rub elbows, maybe you take a flight from here, not to the freaking island, but say you're going from New York to Cali and he's the guy, right? Okay. One time, maybe you can excuse yourself. But if we see your name consistently on there, I don't know if you think it's fair. I think, yeah, it's fair that they're going to have to defend themselves.
No, look, you are known by the company you keep, right? And it's not just being known by that, but the people you hang out with, especially a lot, they end up reflecting on you, and they impact and they shape who you are. So I think it's totally fair. And listen, I always err on the side of candor and transparency. We got to get to truth. If you look at what's going on in this world today, so many problems are caused by deception and deceit. And it's literally causing people to die. It's causing serious problems and corruption in our government. And these guys, the thing is, you're on the Epstein flight logs, right? That someone has that dirt on you. Epstein had this is just the flight logs, right? There's other dirt, there's pictures, there's videos, there's evidence being held over these people. And the thing is, they're all people in high positions of power. So it's like, number one, who's leveraging Epstein? Why is Epstein leveraging these people? What's he holding over their head? And what is he getting them to do? Right. So this is just the start of it. Just getting the list of the people that are on this list. It's just the beginning. We still need to figure out who was actually behind this, what their goals were, and what the real costs were. Because there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in America. We're in trillions of dollars of debt. How much of that was because Epstein was able to leverage this type of dirt over these people?
Yeah, 100%. And, kudos to Jesse Waters there for doing, real journalism. And after, AG Bondi was a little bit vague, getting to it and say, hey, are we going to see some of the real stuff? And I think that's what we hope that our journalists, right, do. Because, Jesse Waters isn't really a journalist. He's a pundit. And I think we conflate those, but he did journalism there better than most. I want to get to a few comments here. We have Squiggles McJr. saying Balfukin time. And then we have him also coming back saying, I want the Maxwell testimony. Yeah, 100%. And then also coming here with, I know she told who she was selling kids to. So I think that also needs to be something we push for too. And I wonder if that's included in the broader Epstein files. I think that would be something big. And I know it's something that is personally tied to you because, like I said, the American Principles Project is very big on the family. So first, I want to hear, what is the American Principles Project?
This is my favorite thing ever. I'm like the most blessed guy because I run this amazing group called American Principles Project. And the best way to describe us is we're big family, right? So in Washington, D.C., there's a special interest arm for everything. There's big oil, big tobacco, big pharma, as we all know, but we're big family, right? So we want to make politicians pay a price when they put porn books in our kids' libraries, when they transition children, when they put men in our daughters' sports, in their locker rooms, their showers, when they take away parental rights, right? When politicians start talking about parents as domestic terrorists, we want to
Yeah.
run campaigns and elections and get these guys out of office and kick them out on their butts because they're ruining the country. The family is the most important institution in the entire world, right?
Yep.
If you have weak families, you're going to have a weak nation, and that leads to tyranny. So we've got to get back to building strong families, and that's what APP does. We're big family, so we're like the special interest group for the American family, making sure that families don't just have a seat at the table, but that we run the table because we're sick and tired of getting pushed around, having our rights taken away. We've seen what the destruction of the American family has done to this country, and it's been horrific.
And, I can't agree with you more, right? Because I think we could start basically going back to the Great Society, right? That was a big push by, I think it was Lyndon Johnson at the Great Society, if I'm not correct, or yeah, one of them. And basically separating families and making it more profitable that if you are a single mother and you don't have means, to just stay single and live off the state. And that was, especially the erosion of the black family there. But then also with a lot of other things, secularism being massive, is something that has also, I think, eroded the American family. And I think we want to be clear. We're talking about the American family, right? So we're talking about the Western Judeo-Christian valued, constitutionally driven family, right? Not necessarily because, the family has different meanings in different places. If you go to a different country, their family unit, their family values may be different. So yours is specifically talking to the American family, correct?
Yeah, look, I I only have so many resources. I'm not USAID. I don't have millions of dollars to throw around to Uganda and Somalia and Bangladesh, to promote like the LGBT lifestyles that our USAID has been promoting. I think America is the leader of the world, right? I think it's a very
Yeah.
special nation. It's the first nation in the entire history of humanity that acknowledged that human beings have rights and those rights come from God. And part of those rights is we get to determine who our leaders are, right? We have this concept of self-government here. That's unique. And I don't think Americans appreciate just how unique it is because no other nation has successfully done it, or at least as successfully as we have. And we're on the verge of losing it. And it's all because we're losing our families. And if you think about it, it's very, very simple. These kids that are born without fathers, it's a major problem because these kids are born in the world and they got the short end of the stick, right?
Yeah.
Their parents broke up or they split for whatever reason. Sometimes, you have to have those splits because there's abuse and bad things going on. But for the most part, there's way too many divorces in this country. People call it quits way too easily and
Yeah.
way too quickly. And it's our kids that are getting hurt by it. So these kids, just play this out real quick. You have two people and they go before a judge, they go before a pastor, and they commit their lives to each other for forever in front of God, in front of all their neighbors and their family, and in front of their communities.
Yep.
But then they just call it quits for whatever reason. I know people that have gotten divorces because they came to the conclusion that their spouse just wasn't the one, right? What a silly reason to get divorced, as if like there's some fate in the stars that controls our destiny and it tells us who there's only one person that we can be matched with. No, the one is the one you choose to love. And the one you chose to love is the one you got married to. And it gets tough sometimes, right? It's
Yeah.
for
It's
better or
not easy
worse.
being
It's
married.
sickness and
It isn't.
health.
It's work.
It's
You got to
tough,
work your
man.
ass off with your spouse, and there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. I know you are a man with many children. I only have two, but I know that you have basically an almost a baseball lineup over there. But how many kids you have? What was it? 7, I believe you said?
Yeah, we're up to 7. So if you
That's
count my wife and I, we got a
fantastic.
baseball team.
You do have a who would be who's cleanup? Is it wife? She's the cleanup
Yeah,
batter.
yeah, no, Katie's MVP. She's the utility player for sure. She can play shortstop, first base, second base, outfield. She does it all. She's fantastic.
So I want to draw attention. I have your website right here, and I think that this is important right here. You're talking about the big family. As starting with $25 a year, you can be a member, right? So it's as little as something where that's honestly, you take you and your spouse out to McDonald's, you're spending that, right? So it's a McDonald's meal a year to start defending the family. And I love what you do. And I think that the American Principles Project is important, and it's important with other, individuals that I've had on here before. I had, Jennifer Say with XXXY,
Oh,
who I think
she's
is
good.
fantastic. I've had both Tiffany Justice and Tina Deskovich from Moms for Liberty, Adam
Yeah.
Coleman, who's been a great representative. He has his new book coming out. And I mean, there's a reason why I have individuals like you guys on here, right? You're the people I want to associate with. I had Billboard Chris on many moons ago, back earlier in this show. And it's like, you're the people. I align with people that put family first, because that's the way I've always been. And like you said, to me, it's the most important thing in the world. My dad's heritage is Ecuadorian. My mom's is Italian. Both very tight family driven, especially the Italian side, right?
Yes.
It's all very tight family driven. And it's like, you know what? Your blood is your blood. Blood is thicker than water, right? That is the Godfather quote. Like, blood is thicker than water. And it's true. You need to be able to do anything for your family. And if that's not your mindset, and if you're not going into a marriage believing that I am no longer just me, right? That priest, that pastor, whoever is giving that sermon up there, if you're doing something semi-religious, is telling you that matrimony, getting married, does not mean that you're still you and they're still them. You're each giving up a part of yourself, and you're good now together. You're joined. And I think that we've lost that concept of being joined. We have too many people that still look at it as an arrangement and not as a situation where you're now not just, I'm not Alex anymore. I'm Alex and Julie. There's a reason why, your wife is typically Mr. or, Mrs. Alex Cuesta, because we're one, right? There isn't a two anymore. So that has completely been lost. Now, are you guys big on trying to end no-fault divorce? Because you were just talking about how easy it is to get divorced. I feel like that's the place we need to start, right? If we want to keep these units together, no-fault divorce is awful. At least the person that initiates it should have to give more, right? Because you're now breaking that bond. How do you guys feel about no-fault divorce?
Well, I oppose it. I think that no fault divorce has weakened marriage entirely as an institution. It's essentially made it meaningless. And
Yeah.
it is something that we need to revisit. And to be totally candid, Alex, we haven't come up with any plans to go after no fault divorce. We're right now, we've been so focused on stopping the bleeding.
Makes
The
sense.
damage and the destruction to our kids has been so bad. And it's not just the trans fight. Like, forget the trans fight for a second. It's porn, right? Like, that's, if I had to put like what I'm most concerned about with my own children, it's how easily accessible pornography is online.
Yeah.
And I know it's popular to like deny that porn has any impact on us,
Oh,
but
there's
what
so many
you
studies.
consume, it's insane. The studies
Yeah.
are all clear. I mean, if we're going to trust the science, well, let's trust the science. This has an impact on you.
Yeah, 100%. 100% it has an impact. And we know porn addiction is real. We know that it has, and anything that can be associated with an addiction changes the physiology, changes the chemical makeup of the brain. And that's not a good thing, right? Like, we have so many men and women with now unrealistic views on love, on sex, on what's appropriate in doing both of those things, right? And then you add on OnlyFans, which now opens up a whole new can of worms of basically paying, for lack of a better terms, a hooker, an online hooker, a prostitute to do things for you. And, I'm very much in the mindset, and I can imagine you're sharing this. If you're 18, to each your own, right? If you're 18 plus. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we have to fully accept it as a society. You can do what you want as long as it's not against the law. But that doesn't mean that I have to accept it fully, right?
No, that's right. And the thing is, adults are free to do what they want for the most part, right? But we still, it's one thing for something to remain legal and
Yeah.
be accessible, but it's a whole other thing to pretend that it doesn't impact you,
Yeah.
right? I drink beer every now and then. that has an impact on my health, right?
Yep.
And it's just because it's legal, it doesn't mean that it's not impairing me or having an impact on me. I still shouldn't drive if I've had too many beers,
Yep.
and I shouldn't drink every night. There's going to be a cost to that. And I think that one of the major problems that we have in America is that once something's made illegal, it's a faux pas to ever criticize it. Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it doesn't have an impact on our lives, our health, or our mental health. This stuff's real nasty. It's real gnarly. I talked to a sociologist just a few weeks ago who was explaining to me that we would be shocked at how badly and how much pornography has impacted our sex lives, even if we've never seen porn ever, because our partner probably has. She
Yep.
actually works with children who are sexually abused. And she told me something that sent shivers up my spine. She said that she knows that pornography is having an impact on our sex lives primarily because she's been doing this before the advent of online pornography. And she said that since pornography has really skyrocketed and taken a hold in America, that she's seen a change in how children are being sexually abused,
So sad.
right? It's insane. It's incredibly terrible. And we have to rein this stuff in.
We 100% do, and I definitely have to give a shout out to Alex Rosen and Predator Poachers and what they do. I don't know if you know Alex. Um,
Yes, I don't
Al-
know it, but I've seen the videos.
oh my God, if you have a chance to talk to Alex, Alex is an open book. Like he said, we're going to schedule at some point to have him come back on the show because he's what he does. He does God's work as well with you guys. Getting these sick individuals, pedophiles and stuff off the streets. And I agree with you because the access is easier than it ever has been now. And I think that's part of the problem. Like, Terry, I don't know how old you are. I'm 36. I'll be 37 this year. But it's like when we were younger, how old are you, Terry? I'm going to ask you that.
I'm 38. I'll be 39 this summer.
Okay, so we're right in the same generation. If me
Yep.
and you wanted to access porn, right? It was either going to that uncle that had a Playboy stacks, right? Like and trying to sneak one of those, or trying to get like the fuzzy HBO shot with it squiggling when your parents weren't there,
Yeah, that's right.
or taking the risk and downloading it on Napster or LimeWire, right? Like
Yep.
those were the ways. Where now you have Pornhub and all the mirrors of Pornhub, right? It's not just one. There's so many ways out there. And then like we grew up with messaging boards, and messaging boards used to be a thing. Now on every messaging board you go on, there's a spot for porn, not just for different messages and conversations. And I know people on here, they probably frequent Reddit. Reddit has a massive problem with that. And even X, which is a spot where me and you are on, which Elon, I guess, is trying to do as much as he can. It's massive. There's so much going on. But I think it's such a hard battle, and it's not one you should ever give up. But the access is so difficult because okay, let's ask if you're 18. Sure, every kid's going to click, yes, I'm 18, right? That's such a minor barrier, but
Yeah.
it's like, how do we solve this problem? Is it something where we just outlaw porn outright? Or, what is the best way to go about doing this? Because the access is unfettered and it seems like it's so difficult.
Well, I'll tell you, we've actually been working on this issue. We're up to 20 states now that have age verification.
That's good.
And what's so crazy, Alex, is like if people hear age verification and they think, "Oh my gosh, I have to upload my photo ID." And yeah, that is one method that you can, use for age verification. But
Yeah.
here's where it gets really cool. I saw a presentation yesterday. I'm sorry, 2 days ago. I did a presentation on Capitol Hill with some members of Congress, and there was someone that was representing one of the age verification companies out there. They do it primarily right now for alcohol sales and tobacco and marijuana sales online, and even gambling.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to show your face. You don't have to upload your photo ID. But what they've done is they've found using scientific research. So by different movements in your hands and measuring that, adults are more coordinated than children. So
That's
they
really
can
cool.
tell that you're over 21 based on certain gestures of your hand. And so it'll walk you through this. It'll actually verify that you're over 21
That's
if
sweet.
you were able to do these. It's so crazy,
That's
and it's
cool.
99% accurate. But there are other ways to do it too. You can answer questions like that you would have to answer for a credit check, right?
Hmm.
So like what car did you own in 2007, right? So it's like a 2003 BMW, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
fill it out. There's so many different ways. one of the things that people bring up as a concern is privacy, right?
Mhm.
And they're shocked to know, first of all, these laws, they expand privacy protections online by making it illegal for these age verification providers to retain any data. They can only say yes or no, over 18 or under 18.
Yep.
So it's actually expanding this. But what people really don't know, and they get scared about this, is there is no privacy online. These
No.
porn companies, they know your IP address. So if you're there, even if you're using a VPN, they can still track it. And here's where they can definitely track it: is every phone has a mobile advertiser identification number. This is
Yep.
how advertisers reach you, and they know who you are and know what to target to you. They know who you are,
And
and
you
they
agree to
actually,
that when you sign up to get the phone. It's in the fine print. You agree
yep.
to participate. And I don't think there's an opt out with any of these big companies either.
No way that you won't be able to use the phone. It will make it worthless to them. This is how they make
Exactly.
money, is advertising. It would disrupt the whole online system, the whole advertising network. We're talking not billions, we're talking trillions of dollars in online
Maybe we need to
advertising
push for
every
that
year.
because screw them. Like maybe we need to start working on that. And the other thing too is when it comes to the privacy in porn, you don't get privacy if you walk into a porn store, buy something, and walk out, right? Like maybe they're all boarded up, and that's because people don't want their kids seeing in. And the other thing is, and I bring up Timcast here, and I know people feel about Tim. I don't care. I like Timcast, but Tim often brings up, and it's true, you don't let a kid walk into a porn store and buy porn. You don't let a kid go in and reach behind the magazines and grab a Penthouse or a Hustler or a Playboy. Why? Because it's illegal. Why should it be okay to let kids go into the porn store, which is Pornhub or whatever one they want to go into, and access porn free? That would be like allowing the kid to sit there, go in a convenience store, take the plastic off, open it up, and sit in the back and read it. No one would allow that. No one would be okay with that. And the store owner will walk in and be like, kid, number one, you didn't pay for that. Number two, can't do that. You'll get me in trouble. So why is it different online than it would be in real life? I completely agree with Tim on that.
No, no. Well, why it's okay is because we have a moronic Supreme Court that has come up with these
Yes.
rulings, and here's what's crazy. Okay, so our laws have been upheld, right? So the courts have ruled that it's absolutely okay for alcohol websites and tobacco websites and sports betting websites and weed websites to verify the age of its people before selling them. And actually,
Yep.
they mandate that. It's part of the law. Okay. So then, so except for porn, right? So you can't do it for porn. But then it's actually legal for it's constitutional for brick and mortar porn stores to check the age and the identity of the person that's receiving it. So they create this super secret constitutional right to be able to give online porn freely to children, and it's all protected. The Supreme Court created the online porn industry. It wouldn't exist the way it does today without the Supreme Court. And these guys have done so much damage. It's unconscionable. That's why it is the way it is. It's because we have a moronic Supreme Court, that it's the same courts that have given us Roe v. Wade and Obergefell and Reno versus ACLU, which is the law that struck down the Communications Decency Act.
Yep. I mean, yeah, it is wild to think. And it's crazy to think that this isn't at the forefront and that there isn't somebody of power suing right now in order to, and I know there's lawsuits left and right, but we got to get something up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court better hear it too, right? Because you can try and get up there all you want, but the Supreme Court has to hear it. And I'm hoping that this group of Supreme Court justices aren't as weak. Now, I'm sure that Thomas and Alito would be right on board, right? They probably want to get this out of there. Gorsuch is mostly a yes on things. Gorsuch is decent. Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts are as 40-60 going with good causes and ever. It's ridiculous that those three can never be counted on to side on the right side of things. And surprising considering, Coney Barrett presented herself as this super Christian, very strong conservative, and she's been one of the weaker ones. So it's ridiculous that the Supreme Court
Well,
isn't having the complete and total back of the American family.
Well, if I could, Alex, there's actually a Supreme Court case right now that's being decided. They had their hearings in January, and
Okay.
it's called the Free Speech Coalition versus Texas. And
Gotcha.
they're challenging, Texas is one of the 20 states that have passed age verification. And the Supreme Court had an opportunity to do a nationwide injunction, basically put a block on the Texas law and a hold on it until they come up with their decision this summer. They refuse to do that. So they're allowing the law to stand. So that's a very promising sign that they're going to uphold the law. But
It's good.
we held the only reason I know this is because we held a big rally outside the Supreme Court that day. But Amy Coney Barrett, she's got, I think, 7 kids, seven
Yeah.
or 9 kids. She actually talked about this, about how, because what the porn companies say is, we don't need age verification. Parents just need to do a better job of using filters. Filters will solve the problem. It's not true at all.
No.
Filters are not accurate. They don't catch all the sites, but
And kids are
filters are
smart. Kids are
impossible.
smarter than their parents when it comes to tech. They are on the
That's what
forefront. They're
Alito
being taught
said.
how to use it. Like,
So Alito says, he asked the porn lobbyist, he said, do you know many parents that are more tech savvy than their 15-year-old children? Can you
exactly.
tell me how many parents you know that are more tech? It's exactly right. But here's where it gets more interesting. The porn filters end up filtering non-pornographic websites too. So because online pornographers in the porn industry, because they're making tons of money, they don't want any questions or any regulations at all. They're making the rest of these websites pay. So I use filters with my family. You have to protect your kids.
Absolutely.
I can't access certain clothing websites
Well, what's
because
crazy
there are
though
certain
is
things in the metadata.
I don't know if you would allow this or you know about this, but if you go on whitehouse.com, it has nothing to do with our government. I don't know if that website is still up, but I guarantee that's something that a porn filter will not catch. And I'll tell you, don't go on white. I mean, our guests maybe have went on whitehouse.com before. I mean, not our guests, our viewers,
If they're
but
our generation, they have, Alex.
absolutely, because it's something you did. Oh, let's go see whitehouse.com. Check this out. Because we were a bunch of idiots. But I mean, it's one of those things that, like, yeah, the filters aren't accurate enough. And even good parents can't be parents 24/7 because there
Right.
comes a point at a child's age. And as they get older, you're hopefully giving them more autonomy, right? Because you're trusting that your guidance as parents is good enough to lead them. Are they going to make mistakes? Are they going to do dumb shit? Absolutely. Are you hoping they're smart enough to do the dumb thing, not get hurt, not get caught, right? Like the way we were. Like sometimes you did something dumb, you hope you didn't get caught, you moved on, and then 20 years later you tell your parents a dumb thing you did, and they're like, you idiot. But it's like you have to give them some freedom, and that comes with giving them, a little more internet access, giving them a little more autonomy, and especially as they're getting older and into high school and becoming men and women, you kind of have to give them that, or otherwise they're gonna resent you at some point, right? So it's so tough, that situation that you're in. And now, how old, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to give me exact, but what are the age ranges of your children?
I got 19 all the way down to 1 year old. My youngest is turning 1 tomorrow. Actually, it's very
Which is
exciting.
nice because you have a lot of assistance from the older ones, right?
I'm telling you. So I meet so many people. I'm always traveling. I'm always going to different events, and I always get, oh wow, 7 kids. That's so much. That must
You
be so
stop
tough.
parenting. The older ones parent the younger ones at this point.
My man,
Yes.
3 is the toughest number. 3 is absolutely the toughest number because you've gone from man to zone defense,
Yeah.
right? And you don't have any of the older kids to help take care of the younger
Yes, I
ones.
love that.
And my life is think about this though. My mom always said, I'm the oldest of 10, right? So
Mhm.
having a big family isn't weird to me. It's actually,
Yeah,
I feel like I'm cutting things a little bit short here by not having, 10, but God will give us however many he wants to give us.
that is true.
You one person to clean our entire house, it would probably take them 2 hours, right? But we have 9 people in my house that can help clean, right?
Yeah.
And you put that, everyone can work. Well, not the 2-year-old, not the 2 and 1-year-old, but
I mean, the
everyone else
2-year-old
can
can walk.
work.
The 2-year-old can put some of the toys away. They can get up and move the toys into the basket.
You got to just match it to their abilities and match it to their age. But everyone has to play a part, right? Because we're not running a hotel.
No.
We're running a household, and that means you have duties and responsibilities. This isn't some place that you just sleep and eat.
Nope.
This is some place that you're part of, right? You want to be part of our family? Well, you got to do your chores, you got to do your duties, because we're giving you things, right? And I instituted this thing, it's called Dadder Day. And every Saturday morning, the
I
kids
love
clean
that.
the house. And if they do that, we go to McDonald's, we go to the movie theater, we go to 7-Eleven, we watch them, we play video games,
Hmm.
we do fun activities, and it's all part of Dadder Day. It's when you spend time with dad, but you got to do your chores and do your
That's great.
responsibilities. It's awesome. The kids look forward to Dadder Days. I promote that idea all the time because I think it's a really cool tradition. I've been doing it, man, for almost 19 years now,
It's
and
really
it's
cool.
it's really fun.
And happy birthday to your little one. My oldest one today turned 7. So it's kind of cool. We're
Oh,
right there. Yeah, my older one turned 7 today. But it's like, the little things there. And I want to jump to talking about being a dad because to me, the coolest thing in the world is being a dad. There are my two favorite titles in life. First one by far is dad, maybe three. First one's dad, second one husband, third one coach. Love freaking being a coach. That's another one I put up there. But it's
yeah.
like, dad's number one, husband two, because those are two things that I always wanted. I always wanted, I knew I wanted to get married, and I knew I wanted to get married to a good woman that, I had a few criteria. I'm shallow, so I needed to be attracted to her, right? That was number one. I needed to be good
Well,
looking,
yeah.
and I have no qualms saying that, right? I'm not one of those people that's like personality first. No, because I need to be attracted to the individual that I am going to be spending the rest of my life with, right? So that's number one. That number two, she needs to be awesome. And my wife is fantastic. And
Mm,
three, and maybe even jumping over the two after the other two are met, did I think she was going to be a good mother? That was the third, and then maybe it overtook the other two, right? And
yep.
she's the most amazing woman I know. She, next to, my mother and sister are right there. My wife is, a notch above. She's my freaking wife. And she's so good. I'm so lucky. And she's great to my two kids. But it's like, you need to have those things, and fatherhood is just so cool to me. Obviously you love being a father, but I think one of the things we've seen in our country is, number one, they don't want us to be masculine.
Yeah.
It's starting to slowly come back, and I think what people don't understand what masculinity truly means. It doesn't mean being the Hulk, right? I'm not a big dude. I'm 5'8"
Yeah.
on a good day, and I'm fatter the more than I'm muscular now, even though I'm working on that again. But it's like, being masculine just means trying to lead in the right way, showing your children, how a man acts in situations, right? And being the role model in a strong way. It is strength. It is, being reliable. Those are big traits that come with masculinity that I think fatherhood's supposed to show. And I think part of the problem is, even with fathers being in some homes, they've allowed themselves to become emasculated. And I think that's a
Yep.
huge problem.
Well, look, I think that becoming a father and practicing becoming a father and working at being a father and becoming a better father every day, that's how you become masculine.
Yeah.
I like how you framed masculinity. It's about leading, but I think it's about servant leadership, right? It's because
Yes.
it's about sacrifice. Like true masculinity is signing up to go to war, to fight, to protect your family, your homeland, and your fellow man, right?
Yep.
Being a father is about dying to yourself. It's about sacrificing. It's about going to work, to a job you might absolutely hate, but it
Yeah.
pays the bills and it gives your kids the opportunity. It's all about dying to yourself, becoming less selfish, right? Which is very
Yeah.
controversial in this world. We're told to
Oh,
practice self love. There could be nothing more emasculating and effeminate than self love. Like, you're focused on yourself, focus on other people. Like, you get a tough life, focus on other people and helping their problems. You're gonna feel a lot better about your own
yeah. Oh,
life
yeah.
when you realize the problems that everyone else is going through, because people probably have it worse than you do.
And you can get a lot of self esteem by helping others, because one of the things, especially as humans, I think it's even more than male, female, as humans, you do enjoy when someone else is better off because you're there. Like, there is a natural feeling of when you're there. Like, my job, my 9 to 5 is, I'm a driving instructor and I teach individuals how to drive. As I enjoy my job, I think my job is easy because I like it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mind it at all. But there is a cool feeling that when I have these students, they specifically want to be around me. They
Yeah.
enjoy what I'm able to do. They think they compliment me. And I always say, I'm not a good driving instructor. I have great students. That is my thing. And I truly believe that if I don't have great students, I can't do my job either. But it's like,
Mhm.
the feeling of when they're genuinely happy that they got their license and you're happy for them. And there's the bittersweet moment where I spend sometimes 20 hours with these individuals over so long of weeks. You get to know each other, you become friends. And there's the
Yeah.
bittersweet moment of the last lesson. Like, never want to see you in my car again because that means you need to get more lessons. So it's like, there's that, but it's like, the moment of being able to get right. Like today, I spoiled my daughter and she had a party on Sunday. And it's like, it was
Mhm.
the enjoyment of being able to watch her be happy
Yeah.
and all the little things that come with it. And like you said, I believe that you're correct with servitude too, because I think people have too skewed of a vision of what it also is to be a husband with your wife. It isn't being
Mhm.
domineering. It isn't my way or the highway. And it was
Right.
never that way. All right. It was portrayed that way in the 20s, the 50s. But if you go back to even some of the greatest, strongest men who wrote diaries or had missives, they were always, number one, very different when they were writing to their significant others. They were
Yep.
sides of them that we saw of great generals, manly men in their writings. And number two, you could just see in the way that they interacted that, yes, women at that time, maybe in the past, didn't have political power, but they were determining so much of what their
Oh
husbands
my
did
gosh.
in so many ways, even in the political realm, right? So there's always been this when you are truly giving yourself to your wife or your wife is giving herself to your husband, it is not that you're becoming subservient to each other. You're willingly wanting to do things and okay with changing if it is going to make you closer. And I think it's just so ridiculous and the narcissism. And I don't know how religious you are, but it's 100% to me a lack of religion. And I'm not the most go to church
Yeah.
every weekend guy, but I have a relationship with God. I have a relationship with Jesus, and I still do everything I do to get closer to them, even if I'm not a church goer every single weekend.
Yeah, no, look, you go back to the Bible and what it says, what it instructs men and how men need to treat their wives. There's everyone will quote the wives be submissive to your husbands, but that next line is brutal for us guys. Husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church, right? And
Ooh,
and how did Christ love the church? Well, he died for us, right? He was willing to pay that ultimate sacrifice so that we could achieve salvation and
mhm,
share in that with him and receive it from him. But it, if you look at Christ's life, all his ministry, he was not, you got to do exactly what I say. He was
yeah,
persuasive. He wanted to win people over. He didn't want to force them to follow him. In fact, anyone that didn't want to follow him, he shook the dust from his sandals and went on, right? From the entire community. So it's
yeah.
all about loving your wife and dying to yourself and your own wishes and desires and serving her. But you are exactly right, my friend, about women and their power, right? Because yes, they didn't always have the right to vote, but you know what? They still controlled a lot of stuff, right?
Then
They
still
still
do.
had huge say, and they still do. That's exact. So, like, I grew up and I had a very strong matriarch in my family. Her name was Grandma Great. She was my great grandmother, but I'm the eldest of an eldest, and we had two teenage pregnancies in there.
Gotcha.
So my great grandmother was 60 when I was born. So she was really like my grandmother. No one pulled anything on her.
Nope.
She was the boss. Grandpa Chuck would never undercut her or attack her or insult her in front of anyone or embarrass her.
Nope.
She was the boss. So this whole feminist narrative about how women have been second-class citizens, it's been foreign to me. I have no clue what you're talking. Maybe these feminists all came from really bad households, really weak families where the women weren't treated right. But that wasn't my experience. The women in my household, the women in my family, they were elevated. They were in charge. The men did not cross them.
100%. And I got to give us Nietzsche. He's talking to you saying, spot on. I have four between 6 years old and 3 months. Zone defense all the way. And, and to be, an observation, it is a lot of white middle class women families, right? That have seemed to have that big issue because you always look at, what are some of the stereotypes of some minority groups, right? The strong mother that nobody fucks with, the Spanish mother that comes in and will grab their son by the ear, or the strong black
Throw the
grandma
shoe.
that nobody messes with, right? And you have all these, and I grew up, my nonna, iron fist, right? My
Yep.
mother is the same way. And my mom is a 4'11" Italian woman, maybe 4'11" on a good day too. That's if she's in heels. But you don't mess with her. And I think that we've just gotten such a weird view of what a strong woman is. And
Hmm.
it's an envy of the fact of what were able to do. And it's like, you know what? You want to switch? Let's go. You want to go work in the mines? You want to go build all the skyscrapers? You want to go do all the shittiest jobs? You want to go to war? I'll switch. I'll carry a womb. You know what? I don't know what childbirth is like, but if you're going to sit there and tell me that I am the most important thing in society, and as a guy, I'm willing to die for a woman because she is more significantly more important than me, it's we need to get women back to the fact that we men have made them the most important things in society, especially Western men, that we worship them more than anything. It's not control. Don't get me wrong, there's some dickheads that control, but for the most part, it's not control. It's because you give life. We want to make sure that you're safe and that your life is easier if we can. Like, it's such a easy concept that it's so annoying to me that we can't just get this through to more people.
Well, look. Think about this. You know, when the second wave feminists were fighting for equal rights, and this is like second wave feminists. They were the ones that were just obsessed with abortion, right?
Yeah.
Women in society were elevated. They weren't the idea of drafting women, for example, into the military to go to war and be turned into hamburger meat in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even today it's still offensive, but they've kind of broken through. It was unconscionable. It was like, why we would never do that to women. We elevate women. Women are the
It's
are the
going back
life
to them
bearers,
being
the
in the
life
fire
bringers.
brigade. They didn't want to be in the fire brigade. That was a huge thing for like not wanting suffrage because they didn't want to
Yeah.
do that.
Well, they were fight. So women were elevated in society. They didn't have to do the ditch digging. They didn't have to go over to war and die and fight and get killed. They were elevated. So these second wave feminists, when they were fighting for equality, they were actually to fight for equality. They would have to lower themselves,
Yep.
right? But they sold it as equality because equality in America has always been a very powerful value. And de Tocqueville wrote about this, right? He wrote about how the strongest value that Americans had was equality. You would go to a tavern and you'd see the landlords with the people that they were renting to, all drinking
Yeah.
and having a good time and treated equally. Their votes counted the same. But it got totally ransacked. And I don't know exactly what all the roots were, but it hasn't played out for women. It's like women have never been more miserable. They've never been more on antidepressants and SSRIs and
Oh,
pharmaceutical drugs. They've never been complaining more and more miserable than they are today. And after all, they have more prosperity, more rights, more access to things. So what's going on here? Well, the family's been broken up, right? The most powerful thing you can do is raise children and shape the next generation,
yep.
right? Like we discount motherhood. Americans look down on motherhood and they look up to being a PR flacky for Google and Amazon. Those jobs suck compared to being a mom. You
Yeah.
just, I feel strongly that young men and young women today, they're missing out. They've been misled.
Yep.
They've been distracted with all. You want to go to college, you want to go give a university, you want to go $200,000 in debt now to get a college degree so you can make what, 60, 70, $80,000 out of college. You're never paying off those college degrees.
Nope.
And by the way, you'll never be able to afford a family now. You've locked yourself in. We've created a whole society where motherhood's not possible for a lot of women because they get trapped in it. And you know what's funny? Liz Warren, the progressive, ultra liberal, left wing senator from Massachusetts, wrote a book in the 90s called The Two Income Trap about how women were getting trapped into this two income trap where they would buy a home with their
Yeah.
husband on two incomes and they wouldn't be able to ever get out of it. We're there, except it's like a four income trap now. You got to have two side jobs in order to make ends meet now.
It's just crazy that right now feminism means you can only choose to go to work. It doesn't mean that you can give women the right and the choice to want to be housewives, right? Like, Harrison Butker, famously the kicker for the Chiefs, got so much flack because he was speaking to a bunch of Christian women at a Christian university and talking about Christian values of if your choice is to go into the home past college and become a housewife, that is just as important and just as good of a career choice as it would be to go on. And he has been gotten so much shit for it. And I think we need to normalize again of, if you want to go and have a career, fine. That's never going back, right? We are never going back to all women essentially go back in the home and only a select few. If you want to
Yep.
have a career, go for it. But if your drive is, I want to be a housewife, that is an okay aspiration too. They're not a gold digger. They are not lazy. They want to provide. If they have values that they believe that they can raise and give to the next generation and don't want to sacrifice it by being away 8, 9, 10 hours a day and giving off their kids to some nanny or the state to go to schools all the time, like, we need to make it okay again to want to be a housewife. I think that's a
No,
massive.
I completely agree. And it's funny, I talked to a lot of people about this stuff. In 1926, there was an article in the Atlantic magazine, right? And they embedded a reporter over in the Soviet Union to find out how Soviet women were faring in the Soviet Union versus American women. And what they found was incredible. The Soviet women, so in the Soviet Union, they worked to abolish the family.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm getting my articles mixed up. I was originally talking about a 1970 something article in the New York Times. The Atlantic article actually covers the abolition of the family in Soviet Russia. And what they found, so the Soviet Union, when it became communist and they had the Russian Revolution, they made marriage dissolution a 5-minute process. So it was no fault. So either spouse could go into the constable and say, I want a divorce, and they would give it within 5 minutes. What ended up happening was these guys would knock up their wives, get divorced, abandon them, leave for the next town, knock up another woman, leave, abandon them. They would do this several times. They would have these criminal orphan gangs who would ransack towns and cause serious chaos and crime.
Wow.
Doesn't that kind of sound like Chicago?
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of sound like every major city in America that has enormous rates of fatherless homes?
Yeah.
This is the problem. It's so obvious. When you get the father who's the ultimate disciplinarian in the household, the one that the kids are actually afraid of, when you get him out of the question, the kids are lawless. They aren't afraid of cops.
Well, they go
aren't
and they
afraid of
look for a
anything.
father figure too, and that father figure happens to be the only individual that, in a way, actually does care about him in some way, right? They care about him as a commodity, but they care about them and they give them the masculinity that they are craving. Listen, you could be the greatest woman in the world, and there are plenty of single mothers right now that do the job, do it well, and raise amazing individuals. But I can guarantee you, most of them would say they would have loved the help from a
Yep.
good man to be there with them. Not that they need a man, but they would have really enjoyed it because there were things that, especially if they're raising a young man, they couldn't provide. Same way, if something ever happened to my wife, I would work my ass off for my girls. But there are some things that a woman can talk to other young ladies better than a man can. And that's why they're so important to have both in the household, because what I can't do, my wife picks up the slack. What she can't do, which, wife, if you ever watch this, you could do anything, I do everything worse. But what she can't do, I pick up the slack. And that's just
Smart
how
man.
it works. So I want to do this real quick because I have a few clips of you over at CPAC talking first about being a good husband and good father, and they're not super long, but I have a few clips here that I want to watch because I think it encapsulates the conversation that we are having about the family and all that stuff. So this is number one right here.
We got to reach our young men, inspire them. You know, JFK would have been a Republican today, right? I think it's obvious. But in his inaugural address, he said, we do these things as Americans not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Nothing we're doing is ever easy. And we have to inspire young men that's ripe, they want the challenge, and there's no better challenge than being a good husband and a good father. We got to.
I think that's great. So talk about that. What was the context of that in terms of that conversation?
Well, we were talking about the attacks on masculinity, right? And you have this whole push by the legacy media and the pundits and the news. They're saying, they're basically defining all masculinity as toxic. And it was, what we had talked about earlier, real masculinity, there's nothing toxic about real
No.
masculinity. Masculinity is what fights the Nazis, right? And real masculinity is what defends his family against perverted teachers that want to put porn books in your kids' schools, right? Masculinity stands up to evil, it stands up to tyrants, it defends, it dies for its family. And I was basically arguing that I we need to get our young men back on track. I think that women want to get married. They might like fake it or whatever and act like they want to be girl bosses. But you know what? If they got a guy who can take care of them and let them live peaceful, like true prosperity is not having to work, right? The ideal is none of us have to work. Everything's taken care of for us, and we can just focus on being together and spending time together as a family. We work all throughout the year to go on vacation and make memories with our families around Christmas and in the summer around 4th of July. That's the purpose of life, is to make memories with your family and to serve them. But we got to inspire these young men. They've been totally distracted,
Yeah.
right? They're not targeted with advertisements promoting marriage and family and the
Nope.
beauty of that and how to serve their country. They're targeted with marijuana advertisements. You ever watch a football game during football
Oh,
season? It's all sports betting. It's
yep.
all
It's all
predatory
gambling. It's
ads.
all addiction.
And then you got the vaping. You got so many like nefarious influences that are targeting our kids, and it's a total porn, right? Porn is a
Porn, right back to it.
distraction
Yeah.
from family, and our kids are inundated with all this garbage, and we got to get rid of that, and we got to focus on getting married and having kids again, because that's real masculinity. It's not toxic masculinity.
No.
It's toxic effeminacy. It is toxic emasculating,
Yes.
right? And like that is what we're actually worried about. It's turning young boys into androgynous, self-centered narcissists that only just want to get high. They're hedonists, right? They just want to
Yeah.
bang
100%.
around with no consequences,
Mm-hmm.
pay for abortions, OnlyFans, like all types of terrible stuff. We gotta get rid of the distractions. I think if we start reaching our young men with altruistic messaging, with idealistic messaging, and showing them what they can be, right? It's like the army commercials, be all you can be. Well, if
Yeah.
you're a young man today, being all you can be means getting married, being a good husband, and then
Mhm.
having kids and being a good father, being present for them. A lot
Yes.
of us, grew up with distant fathers who didn't really spend a lot of time with us, who didn't really talk to us. It's time for dads to get back engaged. So it's twofold, right? It's, if you're a dad already, be a better dad. Put more work into it. Even if you're doing great,
100%.
like there's things that I'm short on, right? That I can improve on. And I spend a lot of time with my kids. I really do love my kids. They're so much fun to be
Well, we
around.
all mess up. We all
We all
mess up.
do.
And,
That's
I
right.
talk to people all the time, and especially like, because again, I deal with a lot of 16-year-old kids, because I'm teaching people how to drive. And it's funny because I'll have some of these conversations with young girls, and, again, they'll talk about sometimes their love life, which is something I don't want to hear, but you're in the car with them all the time and they'll talk about it. And, sometimes we'll talk about masculinity, and I'll say, like, hey, would you rather have a guy who, if you get mugged, would stand up to that mugger or run away with you? And it kind of gets them thinking, right? And then on
Yep.
top of that, with parenting, they're all afraid of being parents because their whole generation has been told the world's going to end via climate. You're not going to be able to afford anything. So don't have a family because you won't get a job. And it's like, we got to
Right.
stop telling our kids that too. Because number one, it's never been easy and it's never going to be. And number two, anyone that's watching here that isn't a parent, don't be scared, right? Because you are going to make a ton of mistakes. You are going to look back, you are going to blow your top on your child, and you're going to see rage. And then you're going to sit down on the couch and go, man, I feel awful about that. And you're going to go apologize to your kid, because that's also a part of being a good parent, is being a disciplinarian, but knowing when you're at your limits and making those mistakes. But I'll tell you right now, the best thing you can do, and I think you'll agree with me, Terry, is try and
Yeah.
keep trying, because your kids will notice your successes significantly more than your mistakes. The only thing that will forgive you more than your kids is your dog. That's it. Your dog just wants to love you unconditionally. Your kids will eventually get pissed at you, but your kids will always
Yeah.
forgive you if you are trying. And like you said, be present, give an effort, show them that you care. Tell your kids you love them, even if they're a little boy, give them a kiss, right? Like,
Mhm.
they will sit there and they will remember these things. And they will remember when you're a disciplinarian, and they will understand more because they know that it's not coming from a place of power or dominance. It is because you are trying for them. So that's my best advice on being a parent.
You will, I just want to add a little bit on there. So I've been talking about this more and more, but my dad passed away in 2021,
Sorry to hear that.
and no, he was a fantastic dad. But growing up, I was 10 years old. My mom was pregnant with number four. I'm, like I said earlier, I'm the oldest of 10 kids, but she was pregnant with number four, and she filed for divorce against my dad. And I'm 10, right? And I have no clue what's going on. Well, she sat me down and explained that my dad had a serious drug addiction. He was addicted to crack cocaine. So,
Wow. That's tough.
our parents, they grew up in that era where crack was like new.
Mhm.
And my dad got hooked on it because he was walking out of a liquor store with his friends one time, and the dealer said, "Hey, you guys smoke weed?" And they were like, "Yeah." And the dealer was like, "You want something better?" Like that's how these kids had no clue what they were about to get into and how addictive it was. So my dad developed a serious drug addiction because his parents got divorced when he was in high school, and it like
Yep.
totally threw his whole life into a spiral. So he develops this, and my mom files for divorce. My grandmother, not my great grandmother, but his mom ends up stepping in and saves the day. She tells him, I never would have divorced your father if he asked me to stay. And so my dad went back to my mom. They repaired it. He got clean. He cleaned up his life so much because he didn't want his children to go through what he went through from his
That's
parents'
awesome.
divorce. But he cleaned up so much that by the time he died, I started writing about his drug addiction, how he overcame it. Because I was actually looking back, I was very proud of it. Like, oh my gosh, like this
You
guy
don't
really
hear that very often.
sacrificed.
You don't hear that very often.
People getting clean from crack, man.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't happen.
Hard.
People just overdose. And today you got this whole fentanyl thing. I mean, thank
Oh,
God that
they
that
don't have a
wasn't on the
chance.
scene.
Yeah.
Um, but my dad passed away, but you're right about kids forgiving, right? Because I don't remember, like my dad passed, I don't remember anything bad about him. It's like all that melted away, and I can just like remember the good things about him. And it's really beautiful, but you're right. Kids are kind of like goldfish in that regard. If you make it up to them, if you show that you're trying and you're really working at it, and you spend that time with them and build a relationship with them, I can't even remember all the bad things that my dad did. I just remember the good things, and it's because he worked hard and he sacrificed and he died to himself. He
Yeah.
could have said,
Yeah.
"Screw it, I don't want to get married. I still want to keep smoking crack. This is my life, not yours." Right? But he didn't. He sacrificed his own desires and wishes. And what's really cool is my parents went on to have six more kids.
Yeah.
Right? So because
Exactly.
he did that, there's six more Shillings. And by the way, there's like I think 7 or 8 more Schilling grandkids
That's
because
amazing.
of that were born from that. It's really cool the little sacrifices we can make to turn things around.
And and it's like I've worked with kids that are, juvenile, like things like that, or pulled away from their homes because I worked in a group home type of setting and things like that. And I worked in a spot called Group Emergency Foster Care where we were the front line. When they were first pulled from their homes, they came to us and we were the temporary stay. Some
Mhm.
of them staying longer than others. And the one thing that held true with most of them, especially the young ones, they were getting pulled away from terrible situations, abuse, heavy, parents always being on drugs, not being there, not being taking care of them and things like that. They all wanted to go back
Mhm.
because the one constant in their life, the one rock in their life was their parents. And even though they were selfish, even though they weren't there for them or not doing the right thing, the kids just wanted mommy. The kids
Yep.
just wanted daddy. And they are so willing to follow and again, forgive that the moment you clean up, the moment you make yourself better, you're back to you're a rock. You were already a rock star, but then it elevates some more. So it's so cool, your dad's story. It's amazing, and I hope we can get more and more of those as we start to get back to our values. Now, what's crazy is we had a few other topics to go through tonight, and we went so long on the family. I freaking love it. Um, we're going to have you back on to talk more about the trans ideology stuff because we have, I do want to mention it before we get out of here. We'll talk a little bit more, but I don't know if I want to jump into something big, but you guys have a database that you guys uncovered, and where the U.S. government spends 174 million on programs to promote gender ideology. So as I pull this up, what the hell is this?
So, look, we wanted to help out our friends at Doge, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. And yeah, keep scrolling because there's some pretty crazy stuff in here. So we wanted to identify our niche is fighting back
God.
against the whole gender identity garbage, right? Especially as it pertains to kids. So we hired a firm and we found all of the expenditures from the federal government that are used to promote gender identity programs. But look, it's a lot of it's international. We highlight a lot of the international stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, man, the federal government is spending so much money here at home to promote these programs in our school. They call them like anti-bullying programs.
Oh,
They
not
call
even
them,
that. It's social emotional learning shit too that they're
yep.
using. And I my school system has it, and I'm gonna go to war with them. Because social emotional learning should be gone. And we worry, there's the big catchphrases, right? DEI is the big one. And I
Yeah.
get it. DEI is the popular thing, but in your schools, the root of that is, if you don't have a program in there, look it up. If it has anything to do with SEL, any form of it, or if CASEL, CASEL, has anything to do with it, research it, get it the hell out. Because
Yep.
it is a tactic that is the root of all the DEI stuff that goes on in schooling and things like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and on top of that, just to add on the SEL stuff, they're collecting data on your kids. They're
Yeah.
actually making them take tests. They're asking them very intrusive questions that are an invasion of privacy.
Don't do
Right?
any
I'm
surveys.
surprised that SEL hasn't been declared, unconstitutional as an invasion of our children's private. Like, who the hell are you that you get to ask my kids about how frequently we go to church or what my opinions are on politics or religion? Like, stay
They
away from
keep
my
on,
kids. That's not why I send them to school.
Terry, you'll laugh at this. They keep on sending a digital resources survey to me. I won't take it. They don't
Yeah.
need to know what I have in my household. Because the
Right.
thing is, it all seems well. They're like, oh, why won't I just tell them all the tech I have? It might help excel my kid. No, they want to know that so they can make up statistics and they can start to compare and say, well, this percentage has it, but this percentage doesn't. Is that fair, kids? No, screw that. That's not,
Yeah.
it's, don't take any, tell your kids not to take any surveys, and you as parents do not take any surveys for the school if they have any of these programs in at all.
Zero. But the getting back to the funding. So one of the
Yeah, go for
I'll
it.
go over the two off the top of my head that have always stuck out. So USAID spent $3.999 million to promote LGBTQI plus lifestyles in Uganda. Uganda. We spent just over
Oh
$2
my
million
God.
dollars to promote gender diverse populations in Bangladesh. Right. So you talk about the federal government
Yeah,
like
right
getting
there.
into $36 trillion in debt, right? And it's absolutely atrocious. Like, we all have to pay this off. My kids are going to be enslaved to the federal government to pay for Bangladesh people to be more gender diverse. This is not why we pay taxes, right? And
No.
keep in mind, like, it's not just that they're wasting it, they're weaponizing the money against all of us. It's debt. It's using programs to build a political infrastructure for progressive Democrats. I don't think the Democratic Party would exist without all of the expenditures coming from the federal government, also known as our tax dollars that we have to work hard for. So they're basically stealing our money and then stealing power from us by using that money against us to politically organize their voters and to cause confusion. It's absolutely atrocious. These are some of the worst people in human history, and I'm just so glad that Elon and Trump are out there cleaning everything up.
And and it goes to exactly what you're talking about history. It just makes sense what leftists do in history, right? They are all centralized power people. So it would make sense that they would be pulling all of their funds and everything from the central power, right? Because that's always how these regimes work. And I've talked to my family and stuff, and my brother on this show, and even my dad, who's on the right and things like that. And they're always like, and they were, until I think I've finally gotten into with them, where they're like, well, it wasn't like this back in the day. And I'm like, no, 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 y'all. They were always going left. They were just biding their time doing it and doing it slowly. It kicked in the jump when, AOC and the squad came in, because they kind of pushed it so much more left. And that's when the Democratic Party went left. But your Nancy Pelosi's, your Harry Reid's, people forget Harry Reid. Harry Reid was a piece of garbage, okay? They forget all of these people that kept on tick, 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 little things to the left, little things to the left. And they've always been this way. You can point back possibly to Woodrow Wilson, maybe even back to Teddy Roosevelt when he was a progressive in the Bull Moose. Like, yes, at one point, Teddy was a Republican just in the fact that he was still opposed to slavery and to Jim Crow and all that stuff. But a lot of his social ideals were not conservative. I don't think anybody should ever confuse Teddy Roosevelt with a conservative. He was a Republican in ways, but the man was not a conservative. So you can look back at the foundations of progressivism with him and then really put into full bore over with Woodrow Wilson, which we're talking in the early 19 teens, right? Because he was World War I. And that's when the Democrats became a leftist party, and they were going further and further and further left, and again went into overdrive. Thank God the conservatives got their act together a little bit. Individuals like yourself who were important to the battle against people like the squad and things like that. But we see all these critical theories, and gender ideology being one of the main ones. Now, quickly, before we jump out of here, I just want to get into this topic. Talk to me like I'm ignorant to everything. Why is gender ideology something bad to talk about to kids in school? Why is it not harmless to just let kids know that there are other things out there and you can be whatever you want to be? And, it's okay, right? There's trans and gay people around the world. So why can't we tell our kids about them?
Well, it's destructive because it's not true. And it's not true at a very harmful level, right? So there's all different types of lies. But what you're doing is you're putting children on a path of self-hatred and self-destruction. So when you start to introduce the idea to a young boy or a young girl that they might actually be a girl trapped in a boy's body or a boy trapped in a girl's body, what ends up happening is the ones that glam onto that, they start to really analyze and become hyper focused on their body. They start to act, you can actually develop gender dysphoria in children by confusing them. And so what we've seen happening, the real problem, before all this medical technology where they would chop you up and inject drugs into you to stop your puberty and your hormone levels, it might not have been so bad, but it would have still caused a lot of problems. Men are men and women are women. Boys are boys and girls are girls. There's no boys can never become girls. No. And so if you try and set a boy on a path to try to become a girl, that's going to end in failure. It's not possible. So you're telling children to try and achieve something that's not only not possible, it's not good, right? It's not good for a boy to throw away his boyhood. And it's not good for a girl to throw away her girlhood. Being a girl is very good. It's very special. It's amazing. You have a whole set of skills that boys will never have, and vice versa. We should be encouraging and affirming our children in their bodies and in who they are. But the reason why introducing ideas like gender dysphoria and gender identity to children is because you're adding confusion. You're adding destruction to their minds. And instead of being focused on learning how to read and write and history and to understand science, you're now getting them hyper obsessed with something that should just be taken for granted. I never once thought about being a girl, right? And thank God I wasn't distracted by that. I was too busy building forts with my friends and doing schoolwork and living my life. You're robbing these little kids of their lives. Right? You should, if you don't have to spend time thinking about your gender identity, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to.
Here's me playing devil's advocate and what maybe someone on the trans pro side might say. What about the few kids that are truly gender dysphoric, don't go out of it, and are actually trans? Because you know what? there is that reality, and that's been throughout history, right? We've seen it. There are men that dress up as women and want to be women, and women that want to become men. They truly suffer from gender dysphoria. There's no amount of therapy that can stop them from wanting to be that, right? What would you say to those individuals that say, well, it's important for us to make people aware, because what if they see Bill one day and then they come in and they're Sarah the next, and they start to bully Sarah? You know what I mean? So what would you say to those individuals that are want to protect, maybe out of ignorance to what gender ideology truly the goal is, but just in
Mhm.
pure bliss of not wanting to get kids bullied for maybe truly suffering from gender dysphoria? What would you say to them?
Well, the reality is that gender dysphoria has existed since like forever, right? Human beings are fallen. That's our nature.
Yeah.
So we've had all different types of problems all throughout human history, and that's okay, right? Because people suffer from all different types of mental disorders and afflictions. But there's no situation where there's a boy's soul trapped in a girl's body or a girl's
No.
soul trapped in a boy's body. There's some type of mental issue going on, and we have to give these people the proper treatment, right? And just because we can't solve that or square that or cure the problem within a certain amount of time, it doesn't mean that we need to start pretending as if the gender dysphoria is correct and that truly is a girl trapped in a boy's body, because it only leads to pain, suffering, and misery, right? And here's the real issue: is that the world that we, forever, that gender dysphoria existed, and we solved it by getting to the root of the problem. So one thing that I've learned by listening to the stories of detransitioners, these are sometimes kids, but also sometimes adults who came to regret their sex change procedures.
Yeah.
All of their stories are different. All of the roots of their gender dysphoria are unique. There are some kids there's one famous story. Actually, it's not that famous, but it's always stuck in my head. There was a little boy who started identifying as a girl, and he went into counseling, and they call it talk therapy. And what the therapist found was that the little boy had just had twin baby sisters born, and his parents were overwhelmed by having three kids under two or under three or four, right? And they had
Yep.
these twins and they were girls. So they were giving all their time and attention and affection to these twin girls. So the boy, as a 3 or 4 year old, came to the logical conclusion as a 3 or 4 year old, oh, if I want my mom and daddy's affection and love, I have to become a girl. And that's why he started dressing up as a girl,
Makes
right? So
sense.
first of all, I think that when it comes to kids, if you have a little boy that wants to play with dolls, let him play with dolls. Like
Absolutely.
don't freak out. Just let them live their lives. Bringing more attention to this stuff can actually exacerbate the problems. But there are other kids that were sexually molested. There was
Yep.
one girl that I worked with whose friend was sexually molested by her father, and she started to become non-binary. Well, the girl started picking up on weird behavior from her father. So she went in and got a non-binary double mastectomy to become non-binary. There are all different types of roots for these problems, and we have to get to the bottom of that. But we've been dealing with gender dysphoria. This is not a new thing,
Well, I think we
right?
need to promote the tomboy again too, right? Because what happened to the
Yes.
tomboy, right? Because we've always had those, young ladies who usually typically are just super freaking athletic, right? A lot of times
Yep.
they could always keep up with the boys, even as the boys develop more. Because, my daughter is, she just turned 7. She plays soccer. And you could see at 6, 7 years old, the more fit, the more athletic boys outpace the, super athletic girls. Again, you have the few
Mhm.
girls that can keep up, but even at this age, you could see the difference. And they're still
Yeah.
playing together because they're young. And, I've already talked to a bunch of parents, and it's like next year, if we're sticking with this, we're going travel because they split by gender there. It's boys on
Mhm.
travel, girls on travel. We don't want them competing with the boys anymore because it gets more physical, the chances of getting hurt, and they get discouraged because your fastest girl is not as fast as your fastest boy at 7 years old. It
Yeah.
already becomes apparent. So it's just one of those things where it's it's almost common sense to the eye test. You see it, and we need to allow girls to go through these things of be a tomboy, right? If you want to be that girl that still dresses in baggy jeans and a polo and a biggie baggy tee, because you're more tomboyish and athletic, or you're going through changes in your body, you don't understand it, and you want to hide it, that's also normal, right? All of these things are normal, and we have to stop telling those girls, number one, right away, oh, you're probably gay, right? Because you're a good athlete and
Yep.
you're more manly. And number two, it went from being you're probably gay to, oh, you're definitely trans, go become a boy. No, let them be
Yeah.
athletic. Let them wear whatever the hell they want. Even if you have a young boy and he wants to be a little more feminine at some points, fine. Puberty is a really weird time.
It
Everyone
is.
explores. Everyone thinks a little different, questions everything about themselves. But in the end, I want to say 99% of us, if we just let it play out, we grow up to be who we're supposed to be. And typically, it's mostly straight, and then the other fraction is usually gay, and not a lot. There's not that many, right? Like, so
Yeah.
we just need to sit there and normalize letting these things play out again without trying to interfere like we always do.
That's right. That's right. And there's all these government programs that are pushing this stuff now, right? Out of this
Yeah.
fear of kids getting bullied. But Alex, I mean, you're my age. I there was no word as trans when I was a kid, right? We knew of transvestites,
Her
which were
transvestite
older
hermaphrodites were
men.
the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We knew about
but
those two.
like transvestites were like older men that liked to cross dress. No
Yeah.
one actually thought they were women, and neither did they. They just
Mm-mm.
like to dress in women's clothing. But this whole idea of transgender, where you're a guy trapped in a girl's body or a girl trapped in a guy's body, that's like 2005-ish around the time. And actually, you
I
can go to the Google search results. They show you the prevalence of words throughout history, and transgender didn't come up as a term until I think like the 1990s or something even, but it's still very small. It's like Judith Butler's like Berkeley,
that's
USC Berkeley.
exactly where it came from. And what's funny is I grew up around the gay community. My mother was a beautician, and one of the people that we hung around with, he was a gay man, but he did drag. And he was Miss Gay New Jersey. And he's one of the
Yeah.
nicest guys around. And he would never sit there and try to push his lifestyle on anybody. That wasn't his thing. One of the nicest individuals you'll meet. But he also will never tell you he's trans because he did. And the thing is, we're conflating. Like, we talk about drag queen story hour. I'm sorry, y'all. None of those dudes are drag queens. They are trans men. There's a
Yeah.
huge difference between that. Drag is a comedy burlesque show where a man dresses up as a woman and does like risque comedy. That is what drag is. And we are conflating something that was a form of comedy, which again, not many people like, you had to be a certain group, a niche group that enjoyed it. But at the same time, it was for adults, and that was generally harmless. Where now we are pushing, men are, there's a whole entire thing about drag queen story hour, and from this source called Little Miss Hot Mess. And it was a paper talking about how it's essentially an infiltration. And it's not at all what people think it is. And it's so sad. And we talk about the things of the safety of women in sports, and I am so happy with Donald Trump's executive order and what he's doing there, and the way he just smacked down the governor of Maine. I thought
So
was
great.
hilarious. um as we start to see this tide shifting, do you think that's the first domino protecting young ladies in sports, in locker rooms, in bathrooms and things like that? Do you think that's the first domino to fall to kind of get us back to normalcy with all these things as we start to get back to being sane in that sector?
No, that's exactly right. It's a gateway. It's a gateway into voters and Americans becoming aware of just how insane the Democratic Party's gotten, right? And there's that Charlemagne the God ad that Trump ran. That was the famous ad, right, where he's talking about her supporting giving inmates in prison transgender surgeries and paying for it tax dollars. And
Yep.
Charlemagne the God's like, what? No, not with my tax dollars. Like these are the whole trans issue itself is a gateway to voters and letting them know, hey, the Democrats have lost their ever loving minds.
Yeah.
And this is just the first ounce of how crazy they are. There's a lot of other areas where they're even more crazy. And it gets them on this pathway to where they see just how nuts this party is. It's so important to keep fighting this. And President Trump's exactly right to keep doing that.
Yeah. And it's like one thing, like I've stopped calling them mostly Democrats or liberals. They're just all leftists.
That's
And the
right.
thing is, I want people to look up what leftist connotates, right? It's very different than what we have been talking about in American vernacular, left and right. But right now we're dealing with leftists, and leftists are not your mother and father's Democrats. They are
Mhm.
dangerous. And when leftists take over, millions of bodies follow.
Yep.
Always, without question. So it's a fight we need to keep fighting. And Terry, I am super happy that you are one of the guys on the front line. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This was fantastic.
Dude, I'll come on any other time. Just at least just to have a conversation with you. This is great. Loved it. Just let me know.
Absolutely. So, once again, he is Terry Schilling. He is the president of the American Principles Project. As I showed before, let me see if I can get this back up because I think it's important that if you have the money to share on the show, I always talk about, um, you know, sharing our money in ways that we can. I talk about, and I didn't mention earlier, but, if you can support the people in North Carolina still, or those in Tennessee from the hurricanes,
Yeah.
supporting our brothers and sisters in California, because not every single one of them is a millionaire, multimillionaire that suffered in those fires. East Palestine, Lahaina, but this is also a place where you can support as well. As important as those are, this is important too, because we need to make sure that we are continuing to fight for the nuclear family, that we are continuing to fight for the Judeo-Christian values that we come on, that we have here, regardless of what your religious belief is, where you come from, what your creed is. Yes, America has everything in it, right? But we need to start making sure that even the individuals that come here want to become Americans and want to act as Americans in our social norms and with the way that we do things. So, they can still practice their religion, but understand we're a Judeo Christian nation, and that's where our laws come from. That's where our values come from. And this is a step to getting us back there. So, please, if you can, sign up, join, and, $25 a year, you won't even feel it, right? Even right now, we have Trump gets us that big, Doge check, put some of it towards this, the American Principles Project. It is a great project. And you can find Terry over on X at Schilling 1776. I'll put it right down there. On Instagram, Schilling 1776 with an underscore at the end. And then find the American Principles Project on X at APP Project, over on Instagram at APP underscore 1776. How did you wrestle that away from Asbury Park Press? I'm surprised that they didn't. I'm from Jersey. APP is Asbury Park Press. So,
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that. That's great. That's great.
yeah.
No, I don't know. I think we just got there first.
So once again, we appreciate everybody that is, that watches, especially all of our regulars. I see you over there, Nate, Squiggles, and Smoking Gent. Appreciate everyone that watches, whether you watch on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble. Where else am I missing? Kick. That's it. We're on Kick too. We appreciate you all. If you listen to this via podcast, we also appreciate it. 5 stars, give a review, and we'll be back next week. I'm pretty sure we have a guest that we've been trying to track down, and I'm pretty sure he's coming on next week. And I will pop on at some point again to just do a random show like I always do. But everyone, we will be back. We will see y'all later. Maybe David will be with me. Maybe he won't. Maybe I'll just tell him to go stay out of West Virginia, and I'll put him in a mountain somewhere and find out if he can get down. We'll make him do some, like, what was it, Naked and Afraid? I'll make him just strip him down, put him with nothing, and just be like, figure out home. Anyway, I'll see everyone later.